Profit here. Today I've got 4 more tips for you. That's right, 4 more. If you missed out on tips 1, 2, and 3 in last week's video, be sure to check it out. So, again, my name is Rachel Profit. I am a white female. I have long reddish brown hair. My pronouns are she and her. Today I am wearing a dark gray shirt with black polka dots. I'm in my office with my epic sticker wall behind me. So for tip number 4, today what I want to show you is how we can take the invoices that you're creating as an accounts payable clerk and save your work. Sometimes you might have a really long invoice and you just need to take a break and you don't want to lose your work. Or maybe you need to follow up on an invoice with the buyer or the warehouse in regards to the product receipt. So you can still enter those details about that invoice and put the invoice on hold, and the system will keep a record of it. So let's start out by going into the Pending Vendor Invoices page found in Accounts Payable. Once you're here on the Pending Vendor Invoices page, you'll see a full list of all of the invoices that have been started but have not yet been posted. So these might be things that others have started. I've actually got one here that I started a little bit earlier and I put it on hold. So if I click on this invoice, it'll open up the details and we'll be able to see that this invoice is on hold. So we won't be able to process this until that hold has been removed. Let's go back to the main page and I'm going to show you how to create your own new invoice and put it on hold. So I'm going to go ahead and click New. And then on my example, I'm going to go ahead and select a purchase order. So I'm going to scroll through the list here and I'm going to select a purchase order number 175 from the list. After I select that purchase order, if there are lines on it and it has product receipts that need to be matched, I can enter in those details. I am still required to enter an invoice number and I'll need to put in an invoice date as well. You'll notice that I don't actually have any product receipts or any lines that are showing up. So this particular purchase order that I chose here has not actually been received yet, which is why I'm not able to match a product receipt. Now I could manually add lines in here, or if there were PO lines that had been received or a product receipt was matched here, I could go ahead and start updating that information, such as quantity, prices, and so on. Since I don't have all the details that I need, all I need to do is simply click on hold. Now I can just close the form and the system will save the record of this particular invoice. If you are in that details page, I'll open it back up here. You don't actually have to close the page to start your next invoice. So once you mark the on hold checkbox and you're ready to move on to that next invoice, you can go ahead and just click on the new icon directly from here and start your next invoice. Again, if there's an issue with it or for whatever reason you need to put it on hold, simply mark the on hold checkbox. When you come back and you're ready to start working on it again and you're ready to post it, be sure to clear that hold. Up next, I'm going to show you how to create saved views so that you can save time when you're entering different types of invoices. So I'm going to navigate into the Pending Vendor Invoices page. And I've already pre-created 2 views. So I'll show you the 2 views that I created and then we'll create a 3rd view together. So opening up the Pending Vendor Invoices details page, you can see that I've created a new save view here called PO Invoice. And if I click on that drop-down box, I also have a non-PO invoice. So taking a look first at my PO invoice screen, you can see one of the first things I did was I actually moved my related documents fields to be first. So this way, when I'm tabbing through the fields, the first thing I want to do is select the purchase order, and then if I have product receipts or purchase agreements that apply, I would select those. And then the system will automatically select your company and invoice account details for you, and I set the tab sequence so that it will skip all the way down to number. You can see this if I quickly open up the Personalize This Page toolbar. and I click on skip, you can see all the fields that are kind of highlighted this pinkish red color. These are the fields that I'm skipping. So I will have to tab through my purchase order, product receipt, and purchase agreement fields. Then I'll tab to the invoice number and invoice dates fields. Then at that point I would be moved down to the lines. Now, taking a look at the lines, I actually hid a number of fields. So you can see here I hid the procurement category field along with the catch weight and catch weight unit, and the rest of the fields are still intact. I didn't add any fields to the grid for this particular view. Now let's switch over and take a quick look at my non-PO invoice. So on my non-PO vendor invoice, I left my company invoice account and invoice vendor name as my first fields, because you will still need to select that. If I open up that personalization toolbar, you can see that I actually hid all of those related document fields for purchase order, because when I'm not doing a purchase order, I don't need to see any of these fields. So that gives me a little bit more real estate. Down on the grids, you can see that I hid the actual item number and item name fields, catch weight fields. I also hid the site, warehouse, and all of the product receipt related fields. And you will notice that I added a column here for the template ID. This is the template ID that's used for the financial dimension breakdown of the voucher that comes from the financial dimensions tab over at the far right is where you'll find that tab. So that template ID is the field that I've added to the grid here. If we take a look at my tabbing sequence, you'll notice that up on the header, I've got the invoice account, the invoice number, the invoice date, and the rest of the fields are being skipped in my tabbing sequence. So let's go ahead and create a new view quickly. So when you're ready to make a new view, you can start from any one of your existing views. For this example, I'm going to go ahead and start from the non-PO invoice view. Primarily what I want to do is add the 1099 fields to my grid. So you'll notice that we have a 1099 tab over here on the very far right down in the line details. Now when you're entering a 1099 type invoice, you may be required to enter in all of these additional fields. And instead of having to click down to this tab and enter those additional pieces of information, I'm going to add these fields to my grid. So to do this, I'm going to open up the Personalize This Page toolbar, which is found on Options, and then I'm going to click Add Field. Then I'll need to click into the grid where I want to add the field. So I'm going to click into this grid, and it'll take a second here to launch the Add Field pane on the right-hand side of my screen. So now we can see there's that template ID that I already added, but I want to go ahead and add my 1099 fields. There's also a field called delivery state. Obviously there's a lot of additional fields. If I want to add those to my grid, I can go ahead and do that and click update. And now you can see the new fields have been added. If you want to change the sequence of those fields, you can simply use your move toolbar and move the columns and put them in the sequence that you want them to appear in. So I want my box code to come first, then the 1099 amount, then the 1099 state amount if it applies, and the delivery state last. Once you're happy with the view, you can close this window, and then up at the top you'll notice there's a little star next to non-PO invoice. This means that my view has unsaved changes. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that drop down and choose Save As, and I'm going to go ahead and type in a name, 1099 invoice. Now I can enter in those additional details. Use this view when entering invoices that require a 1099. I can optionally pin one of my views as the default, but I pinned my purchase order invoice view as my default, so I can go ahead and click Save. Now, when you click on this drop-down box, you'll see that I've got all of these additional views in the list. If you click on the ellipsis in the lower right-hand corner, or the More button, and then select Manage My Views, You have the ability to select which one will be pinned. You can also move them up and down. So if I want a different view to kind of show up at the top of the list, to make it easier to select these when I'm using my keyboard, for example, I can do that. Right now, you'll notice that these are all personal views, but we do have the ability to publish these views, which would allow us to save those views for other users. If you go through that publish process, you'll use that publish button at the top, select the different options, choose which legal entities and which security roles should have access, and click publish, which should make those changes effective immediately. Now you can see those changes have taken effect. So as long as you remember to click update when you close that screen, you will have your new updates to your page. So I hope that you take this tip and you can personalize your views for whatever your needs might be in the fields that your organization requires to be filled in to make that data entry process faster. You may or may not be aware, but every screen in the system can be navigated by just using your keyboard. You can find the keyboard shortcuts for any page in the system by right-clicking and selecting View Shortcuts. This will open up a page that will show you the available shortcuts for the page that you're on. If you want to see all the product shortcuts, you can click on the link in the bottom of this dialog, which will take you into a Docs article that will explain all of the keyboard shortcuts that are available throughout the entire system. I strongly encourage you to check out the keyboard shortcuts and learn how to navigate Dynamics 365 without using your mouse. For my last tip for the Accounts Payable Clerk, I want to show you how to use the workspaces. I'm logged in here as an Accounts Payable Clerk, and the workspace that I want to highlight for today is the Vendor Invoice Entry workspace. You'll find this as a tile on your home page. You can also find it when you navigate into Accounts Payable, and then it's under Workspaces called Vendor Invoice Entry. When you open up a new workspace, the look and feel of all workspaces throughout the system is pretty similar. You'll have some tiles on the left, some lists in the middle, and some links on the right. Some workspaces may have additional features, but these are the basics that you'll find in most workspaces throughout the system. Now, let's say I want to customize this workspace and get rid of some things I don't use, and maybe add some other things that my organization uses on a regular basis. Much like any other page in the system, you can open up and personalize this page. So for example, I don't use the invoice pool, so I can hide that. Maybe we're not using journals with workflows, so I can hide those too, along with the pending assigned to me. If you want to add things to your workspace, however, you won't use the add field. If there is a grid that you like in one of the lists that shows up on a page, you can use the add field inside of that grid. Instead, if you want to add entire new tabs of things or entire new links, we can do that quickly and easily by opening the page you want to add. For my example, I want to add in the details around the vendor invoices that failed to import, since my organization has an integration and we're using this feature, and this is a page I have to use very frequently. There are 3 ways you can add a page into your workspace. So from this page, I'm going to click on the Options tab and then click Add to Workspace. You'll need to select which workspace you want to add to this particular page that you're onto. So I'm choosing that vendor invoice entry, and I'm going to add it all 3 ways so you can see exactly what it looks like. I'm going to add it first as a tile and then click Configure. Here, I'll give it a name. So I want to show account on the tile, so I leave that option as selected yes, and I'll click OK. I'm going to do this a second time. And for my second one, I'm going to choose List and then click Configure. Now I'll be presented with a list of fields that I want to include. There's two ways that you can do this. You can do this as a simple, which lets you choose up to 3 columns, or you can choose a tabular with up to 8 columns. I'm going to go ahead and update the name for the tab. So for this example, again, I'm going to do vendor invoices with errors. I'm happy with the fields that it's selected, but if I want to select different fields, I can unmark certain checkboxes and then add others and click OK. For the last example, I'm going to add this as a link. So I'll choose the link option in the presentation and click Configure. Again, I'm going to call this vendor invoices with errors, and I need to give it a group name. If you want to add a link to an existing group, you'll need to type in the name of that group exactly. If you change the name or type in something here that does not already exist, the system will automatically create a new group. So I'm going to create a group called Process Invoices and click OK. Now that I've added this page to my workspace 3 different ways, let's go back and take a look at what it looks like now. So when I click on my vendor invoice entry workspace, I can see my new tile called vendor invoices with errors. You can see that the number is 0, and that's because I have no records in my particular demo data. I've also got a new tab here called Vendor Invoices with Errors, where I would be able to see the details. The columns that it added came from the list of columns that were selected. If you want to rearrange these columns, hide columns, or add columns, you can do that right from the options and then personalize this page using the standard personalization toolbar. And scrolling over to the right, I've got the links. So you might have noticed that I added a new group called Process Invoices, and there I can see my vendor invoices with errors. I encourage you to use workspaces as a way to streamline your processes and your day-to-day activities that you need to do on a repetitive basis.